A cloud of suspicion surrounds the deaths of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife, whose bodies were found in their Santa Fe home.
This is the leaked FBI interrogation of Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law, and you're about to watch a man destroy himself in real time. The footage was sealed inside a federal case file, never supposed to reach the public. But it did. And what it captured over 6 hours inside a windowless room changes everything about this case. It starts with a son-in-law in pajamas at 5:30 a.m., still believing he can outsmart 2 FBI agents. He is performing grief, performing the worried family member so convincingly that for the first 90 minutes, you'd almost believe him. Almost. Then the lead agent reaches for a laptop, presses play on a traced phone call from 2:47 a.m., and the performance dies in 4 seconds flat. You know, what comes out of that speaker is the son-in-law's own voice discussing things about Nancy's kidnapping that only the person who planned it would ever know. And that recording isn't even the most damaging thing in the room. The footage opens cold. Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law is being walked into a stark, windowless FBI interview room at 5:30 a.m., still in the pajamas he was wearing when a SWAT team put a battering ram through his front door an hour earlier. Hair uncombed, eyes swollen, but already performing, already projecting this theatrical confusion, blinking under the fluorescent lights like a man who couldn't possibly fathom why federal agents just dragged him out of bed. 2 agents sit down across from him. Lead interrogator, Special Agent Russell Dante, a 23-year veteran out of the FBI's Violent Crimes Division, he's known internally for his ability to break suspects who believe they're smarter than everyone in the room. His partner, a younger agent who barely speaks for the entire next 6 hours, but whose pen never stops moving, documenting every word, every flinch, every micro-expression that crosses the son-in-law's face. Here's the catch. Agent Dante reads the Miranda warnings and the son-in-law waves them off like they're an inconvenience. Doesn't hesitate. Doesn't ask for a moment to think. He declines an attorney with the casual arrogance of a man who has already decided he's going to outmaneuver 2 federal investigators and walk out of this building before lunch. That single decision made in less than 3 seconds destroyed his life. His opening performance is polished. I have absolutely no idea why I'm here. This is insane. I would never hurt Nancy. She's my mother-in-law. I love her like my own mother. Leaning forward, hands flat on the table, steady eye contact. Every word rehearsed, every gesture calculated. He'd clearly spent time preparing for the possibility that this moment might come. What he didn't prepare for was Russell Dante. The rehearsed timeline. When agents ask him to walk through the evening Nancy disappeared, he delivers his story with a kind of consistency that only comes from repetition. Nancy came for dinner at his and Annie's home. They played card games. Nancy's favorite, the same one she'd been playing since her daughters were children. She was in great spirits. Around 9:45 p.m., he volunteered to drive her home because it was dark. He describes walking Nancy to her front door, waiting until he heard the lock click behind her, and driving away feeling satisfied she was safe. He adds granular details to build credibility. What Nancy wore, what she ate, how she laughed telling a story about her late husband during dessert. That last detail is important. Remember it. Because it means the last evening Nancy Guthrie spent as a free woman ended with her laughing at her own dinner table, surrounded by family she trusted completely, including the man sitting across from Agent Dante right now. Now pay attention to this next part. For 90 full minutes, the son-in-law maintained total composure, answered every question without hesitation, showed zero signs of nervousness. He even asked the agents how the investigation was going, playing the concerned relative eager to help find Nancy rather than the man who arranged her abduction. Agent Dante let him talk. Had let him repeat his story, let him grow more confident with each telling, because Dante wasn't gathering information anymore. He was building a runway, giving this man every opportunity to lock himself into a version of events that was about to be demolished by a single audio recording. But the rehearsed timeline was just the calm before something much worse. What Agent Dante had been waiting 90 minutes to play changed the temperature of that room in under 4 seconds. The phone call, 90 minutes in. The son-in-law is leaning back now, almost relaxed, delivering his third retelling of that evening with growing confidence. Agent Dante signals to his partner without breaking eye contact with the suspect. The younger agent produces a laptop and audio equipment, sets them on the table without explanation. Dante's entire demeanor shifts. The conversational warmth drains out of his voice like water through a cracked glass. He leans forward and says 7 words. I want you to listen very carefully. The son-in-law's initial reaction, mild curiosity, a flicker of amusement, even as if he's genuinely interested in whatever the FBI thinks they have. That curiosity lasted exactly as long as it took for the speakers to fill that room with his own voice. The recording is a traced phone call from a burner phone to the son-in-law's personal cell at 2:47 a.m. A conversation where the kidnapper discusses Nancy's deteriorating condition, the failed ransom plan, and what to do with her now that the situation has spiraled beyond recovery. The son-in-law's voice on that recording isn't ambiguous, isn't similar. It's him speaking with familiarity, discussing logistics, referencing details about Nancy's captivity that only someone running the operation would know. And get this, the physical transformation captured on that footage is something that once you see it, you can never unsee. The color drains from his face in real time, not a figure of speech. His skin goes from normal to gray in seconds. His hands steady on that table for over an hour start trembling so violently the camera picks it up from 6 feet away. His whole body recoils backward. The confident lean replaced by the posture of a man who wants to disappear into his chair. His eyes dart between Dante and the second agent, searching for escape, finding nothing. The recording ends. Silence swallows the room. 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 7. Agent Dante lets the silence do the work, lets it press down on the son-in-law like a physical weight. Then he breaks it with devastating simplicity. That's your voice, isn't it? The son-in-law tries denial. That doesn't sound like me. His voice cracks on the word me. I don't know what that is. But the weakness in every syllable betrays him. He knows. They know. The camera knows. Dante plays the recording again. This time he pauses at specific moments, isolating statements that prove coordination with Nancy's kidnapper. Each pause is surgical. Each one strips away another layer of the performance. The son-in-law's breathing changes visibly on the footage, shallow and rapid like someone fighting the urge to be sick. His rehearsed calm is completely gone, replaced by the darting eyes and involuntary swallowing of a man in full survival mode. He pivots, scrambling for anything that might work. The call was about something else entirely. Business matters. A personal situation with his cousin Marcus that investigators are misinterpreting. Something, anything other than what that recording clearly and unmistakably captured him doing. Dante lets that explanation sit in the air for exactly long enough to make the son-in-law think it might work. The younger agent glances at Dante. Dante's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly, the only visible reaction from a man who has sat across from killers for 2 decades. Then he nods toward the folder. If this is your first time here and you're already locked in, subscribe right now. Because what agents pulled out of that folder next made the phone call look like a warm-up. The text messages. The second agent drops a thick folder on the table. The sound it makes is heavy. And inside are printed copies of every text message exchanged between the son-in-law's phone and Marcus's phone, spanning the 3 weeks before Nancy disappeared through the night she was taken. Agent Dante begins reading them aloud, slowly, deliberately, sliding each printed page across the table so the son-in-law can see his own words reflected back at him in black ink. Thursday night works best. Her routine is predictable. You'll need to disable the doorbell camera first thing. I'll tell you exactly where it is. The back door is the weak point. Front door has too much security. She takes sleeping pills around 10 p.m. Give it an hour after that. Each message strips away another layer of pretense. The son-in-law's face tells the entire story. That slow, sickening realization that every text he sent while planning this crime had been recovered, preserved, and was now being read back to him under fluorescent lights in a federal building. These aren't vague messages open to interpretation. They reference Nancy's specific routine, her home layout, her vulnerability window, her medication schedule, the woman who laughed at dinner and trusted this man to drive her home safely, reduced to a target profile in his own text messages. Agent Dante pauses after reading the last message, lets the weight of it settle. The younger agent's pen has stopped again. He's looking directly at the son-in-law now with an expression the footage captures clearly. Not anger, not disgust, but something closer to disbelief. As if even after years of working violent crime cases, and the calculated coldness of those messages toward a family member registered as something different. But here's where it gets really dark. The son-in-law claims his phone was hacked. Someone else sent those messages to frame him. Agent Dante doesn't even blink. Cell tower records place the phone at locations matching the son-in-law's verified whereabouts when each message was sent. His workplace, his home, restaurants where credit card receipts confirm his presence. The timestamps align with his daily routine in ways that would be physically impossible for a remote hacker to replicate without carrying the phone in his pocket 24 hours a day. He pivots again. Marcus fabricated the messages, spoofed them somehow. That crumbles too. The messages exist on Marcus's phone, on the carrier's servers, on the son-in-law's own device, and in cloud backups that forensic analysis confirmed are authentic and completely unaltered. 4 independent sources, all matching perfectly. The footage shows him sinking deeper into his chair with each failed explanation. The man who strutted into this room is gone. What's sitting there now is someone watching his life disintegrate in real time. And the text messages weren't even the worst of it. What agents found on his laptop made everything, the phone call, the texts, the lies, look like prologue. The laptop, this is the detail that changes everything. Despite the son-in-law running a commercial data wiping program on his laptop 3 days before his arrest, specifically targeting internet history files, FBI digital forensic specialists recovered everything, every search, every query, every digital fingerprint he thought he'd erased. Agent Dante reads the recovered searches aloud from a printed forensic report. His voice is flat, clinical, but the younger agent's pen stops moving for the first time in 4 hours. He just stares at the table. Searches for how to kidnap someone without leaving evidence. Queries about anonymous Bitcoin ransom payments. Research into how long elderly individuals can survive without prescribed medications. Methods for disposing of remains in desert locations. Comparisons between sentencing for kidnapping versus murder. And the most chilling entry, a search conducted 72 hours before Nancy disappeared. Whether accomplices receive lesser sentences if the victim dies during captivity. He wasn't just planning a kidnapping. He was planning for the possibility, maybe the intention, that Nancy wouldn't survive it. The searches spanned 3 weeks, progressing from general research into horrifyingly specific operational planning, disabling doorbell cameras, bypassing residential alarm systems, finding accomplices willing to commit crimes for cash, all from the same device where forensic specialists also found searches for Nancy's specific medication schedule and her home security system. The son-in-law's defense, he was researching a crime novel. Agent Dante shut that down with 3 sentences. No manuscript files on the laptop, no notes, no outlines. Not a single document suggesting any creative writing project had ever existed on that machine. At this point, the son-in-law finally tried invoking his Fifth Amendment right to silence. Too late. 3 hours of recorded lies, contradictions, and failed explanations were already preserved on that camera. The damage was catastrophic and irreversible, but the evidence wasn't finished with him yet. What agents revealed about his finances explained not just how he planned the kidnapping, but why he was desperate enough to orchestrate it in the first place. Following the money, 3 hours in, agents shifted to motive, and what they laid out painted the portrait of a man drowning so completely that he convinced himself killing an 84-year-old woman was his only way to the surface. 3 devastating details. That's all it took to establish motive beyond any reasonable doubt. First, total financial collapse. Checking account overdrawn by thousands. Credit cards maxed with payments months behind. Mortgage in default. Foreclosure threatened within 60 days. Had combined debts exceeding $250,000 against income that barely covered monthly expenses. Second, unexplained cash withdrawals totaling $30,000 in the 3 weeks before Nancy vanished. When asked where the money went, the son-in-law's answers shifted like sand. Business expenses, then home repairs, then a blank stare, and the admission that he simply couldn't remember. $30,000 gone. No explanation. Now, pay attention to this next part because this is where desperation becomes motive. Nancy's existing will left her multi-million-dollar estate split equally between her 2 daughters. If Nancy died before changing that document, Annie would inherit approximately $2 million. Marital property shared with her husband, every debt erased, every creditor silenced, every problem solved with a single inheritance check. But Nancy had already scheduled an appointment with her attorney to execute a revised will, one that would dramatically reduce Annie's share. That appointment was days away. The son-in-law knew about it. Agents confirmed he'd overheard Nancy discussing the changes at a family dinner. The same dinner where Nancy laughed, telling stories about her late husband. The same dinner where she trusted her son-in-law enough to let him drive her home. He wasn't just broke. He was watching a $2 million lifeline disappear and the clock was running out. But the financial trail only explained the why. What happened next in that interrogation room revealed the how. And it started with the son-in-law's psychological defenses finally completely shattering. The breaking point, 4.5 hours in, the leaked footage shows a man physically unraveling. A slumped posture, visible exhaustion, hands that won't stop shaking. The confident innocence from the first hour is gone, replaced by the hollow expression of someone who has run out of lies and knows it. Agent Dante recognizes the breaking point, shifts tactics completely. The confrontational pressure disappears, replaced by something warmer, more dangerous. After hours of battering the suspect with evidence, Dante becomes the understanding ally, offering a path to redemption. Look, I've been doing this for 23 years. I've seen a lot of people in your situation. Things start as one thing and spiral into something you never intended. Maybe you just wanted to scare Nancy. Get her to reconsider the will changes. Maybe you thought Marcus would hold her for a day or two and let her go once she agreed. Things got out of hand. It happens. And then Dante leans forward, drops his voice. But right now, Nancy is out there somewhere. She's 84 years old. She doesn't have her heart medication. She doesn't have her blood pressure pills. She has a framed photo of her grandchildren in her purse that she carries everywhere. And she's alone without anyone who cares about her. You can stop that suffering right now in this room. The son-in-law's rigid defensiveness cracks. His eyes fill with tears for the first time in 4.5 hours. And then comes the first real admission. Small but seismic. I knew Marcus was having financial problems. I gave him some money to help out. How much? Maybe $20,000. That single answer contradicted everything he'd said. He'd claimed not to remember where the cash withdrawals went. And now he's admitting $20,000 went directly to the man who physically kidnapped Nancy. The financial link between orchestrator and accomplice established in the suspect's own words. And that crack in the wall, it was about to become a complete collapse. Blame shifting and collapse. With total denial dead, the son-in-law pivoted to his last strategy, admitting a connection to Marcus while insisting his cousin acted alone. Marcus was desperate, unstable, must have independently planned the kidnapping using information overheard during family conversations. Those texts sent from his phone when he wasn't looking. Fabricated somehow. Agent Dante let him build this narrative for several minutes, nodded along, took notes, gave every indication the new story was being taken seriously. Then he pulled it apart with a single sentence. Oh, we have Marcus in the next room, and he's telling us something very different. The blood left the son-in-law's face for the second time that morning. Marcus says, "You approached him with the plan, laid the whole thing out. The timeline, the entry point, when Nancy would be most vulnerable. You offered him $50,000 to take her and hold her until she died without her medications or until you collected ransom. He's giving us specifics. The restaurant where you met to plan, the parking lot where you handed him cash, instructions about Nancy's home that he couldn't possibly know unless you personally told him. He even knows which sleeping pills Nancy takes and what time she takes them. That's not information a man picks up from casual family conversation. Here's the catch. Criminals almost always assume loyalty among conspirators, and they build entire escape plans around the belief that their accomplices will stay silent, absorb the consequences, and protect them rather than cooperate. That assumption is almost universally wrong when federal charges enter the picture. When Marcus realized he was facing decades in a federal prison, not state, federal, loyalty evaporated in a matter of hours. Self-preservation won. It always does. Additional evidence piled on. Security camera footage from a restaurant showing the two men meeting privately multiple times before Nancy vanished. Witness statements from staff who overheard them discussing a job and taking care of a problem. Financial records proving promised payments beyond the $30,000 already delivered. Cornered completely, the son-in-law attempted one final maneuver. A carefully worded partial confession designed to minimize legal exposure. The kidnapping discussions were hypothetical. He may have mentioned details about Nancy's routine, but never explicitly told Marcus to take her. Agent Dante didn't need a long response. He pointed to the 2:47 a.m. phone call. A man who's surprised by a crime doesn't receive calls from the perpetrator discussing the victim's condition and debating next steps. A man who's surprised doesn't talk logistics about a failed ransom plan. A man who's surprised doesn't ask what to do with an 84-year-old woman who's running out of time. The footage captures the exact moment the son-in-law realizes no version of this story ends with him walking free. Every lie cataloged, every pivot documented, every attempt to minimize met with evidence that made his position worse. Yeah, and somewhere down the hallway, Marcus was filling in every gap the physical evidence couldn't reach. 6 hours. That's how long it took for a man who walked into that room believing he was the smartest person in it to completely unravel under the weight of his own lies. And the most disturbing part of this entire interrogation, not the evidence, not the searches, not the phone call, it's the fact that across 6 hours and dozens of opportunities, the son-in-law never once expressed genuine concern for Nancy. Not once. Every tear was for himself. Every emotional moment was about his consequences, his future, his collapsing life. The 84-year-old woman who carried photos of her grandchildren in her purse and laughed at her own dinner table the night she was taken. She was never more than a dollar sign to him. What Marcus told agents about those first 48 hours after Nancy was taken left hardened investigators unable to speak. Subscribe now because that interrogation footage is next. And the question everyone in that building was asking: whether Nancy Guthrie was still alive when they finally found her.